Dallas. The Dallas Cowboys wasted everyone's time with this entire process. They knew they had the best running back in the NFL in terms of production. How much so? This much so. Ezekiel Elliott led the NFL in rushing as a rookie, if you remember back in 2016, right? And his 4,048 total yards so far in his career are by far the most in the NFL over the last 3 seasons. In fact, he's just one of 13 players in NFL history with more than 4,000 rushing yards in his first 3 seasons, okay? His production was always there. His production always suggested he was underpaid, but it was a rookie deal. You come into the league, you have to establish yourself. 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, especially at the running back position. That's exactly what he did. So he understood that he was the most valuable running back in the NFL and maybe the most valuable player on this entire football team. So he used the leverage that he had, which was to hold out, despite having 2 years remaining on his contract that would have paid a little more than $13 million. He had 2 years remaining, but he still held out because he knew he was underpaid at that moment. And to get the guaranteed money he deserved, the only leverage he had was to hold out. And that's what he did. The Cowboys knew that they needed Ezekiel Elliott on the roster, ready for week 1, if they have a legitimate chance to go through the season and contend for a Super Bowl appearance. They knew that from the very beginning. But all we heard from Stephen Jones, general manager, Jerry Jones, owner, president, what all the titles are down there, was that 2 things. 1, they were not going to set the market. You ever remember that? Stephen Jones said that, talking about all the deals they have coming up with Dak and Amari Cooper and, of course, Zeke. He said, we're damn sure not going to be a market setter. That's what Stephen Jones said. We are damn sure not going to be a market setter. And he qualified it by saying, because of all the things that go with being a Dallas Cowboy. It didn't make sense when he said it. I brought it up on SportsCenter a couple times. I brought it up on ESPN Radio. It didn't make sense when he said it, and it sure as hell doesn't make sense now because you know what the Dallas Cowboys are? Market setters. They set the market at the running back position with Ezekiel Elliott's contract that gives him $50 million guaranteed, which is the most in the NFL. $5 million more than Todd Gurley. And he deserves every penny of it based on his production. So if Ezekiel Elliott knew his worth, if the Dallas Cowboys knew Zeke's worth, why did it take all this time? Why did they waste everyone's time getting to this point? What was it really for? Now, what NFL Twitter's been saying today is that it's for the attention. Jerry Jones likes the attention. Everyone's talking about the Dallas Cowboys. For weeks on end, days on days, we were talking about the Dallas Cowboys. Let me tell you a little something about sports media, folks. We were going to talk about the Cowboys regardless because they're the Cowboys. Same way we talk about the Patriots. Same way we talk about all the great teams and all the great leagues. We talk about the star players and the star franchises. We were going to talk about Ezekiel Elliott and Dak Prescott and that Dallas Cowboys squad regardless of this situation with Ezekiel Elliott. So if you really think they got a certain amount of money worth of advertisement and attention out of Zeke holding out and waiting to the last week, you're fooling yourselves. That's not how it works. We talk about stars. You talk about stars. That's who you talk about on social media. That's who you call into sports talk radio shows and talk about. That's what you tune into for television. We talk about stars. The Cowboys are one of the star franchises in all of sports. We were going to talk about them going into the season. We were going to say how they were the favorite to win the NFC East, and if things fall right, maybe they can go to the Super Bowl. We were going to be having those exact same conversations. But as it related to when or whether Ezekiel Elliott was going to sign a contract, Cowboys just wasted everybody's time. They wasted their fans' time. They wasted local media's time. They wasted their teammates' time because the teammates had to answer questions about Ezekiel Elliott on the regular. They just wasted everybody's time because the inevitable happened. The best player in the league has the richest contract at his position. That's what happened. Now, as I promised, we're going to talk more about the contract specifically with Josina coming up later because, you know, it's 6-7 years, could be $100+ million, da-da-da. The only numbers that really matter, as we know, in current NFL contract talk is the guaranteed money. $50 million for Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley with $45. Also going to talk to Josina about Melvin Gordon and how he's impacted potentially by Ezekiel Elliott. One other aspect about how this thing played out. We're going to hear from Jerry Jones here in a few seconds because he was on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange in New York, Lower Manhattan today, and he was asked about Ezekiel Elliott. And one of the questions, or one of the subjects that was broached, is whether Zeke is overpaid, if they overpaid for Zeke at this position. Here is Jerry Jones' answer to that idea.
Anybody, when you're talking about that kind of money, we're all overpaid, if you really wanted to look at it that way. For what he has done, how he's worked, how he's utilized his skills, then he's in the marketplace of where we are in pro sports and pro football.
So he's in the marketplace based on what he does for a living, right? And he was in that same position 2 weeks ago. He was in that same position a month ago, right? So they finally got here. But because of this and the way it's played out, here's what I need fans to do, all right? Here's what I need fans to do. I know some of you are going to call up the show, 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. You're going to call the show. But here's what I need you not to do. When you call the show or you hit me up on Twitter at Michael Eaves, don't criticize NFL players ever again for holding out. Don't do it. Don't do it. It is currently the only leverage they have to get fair market value under the current CBA. Yeah, Ease, but why don't they change the CBA? That's one thing. Trust me, the players want to do that. DeMaurice Smith probably wants to do that. That's going to have to be a negotiation as well. There's no guarantee it's going to get done. In the interim, while they work towards that end, this is the only leverage they have to hold out. And if you go back and look at recent memory, it's worked out for those who deserved it to begin with. And typically the only players who really hold out at that level are the star players with star production that deserve star pay. Ezekiel Elliott just did it. He got $50 million guaranteed, the most ever at that position. Khalil Mack did it last year. He got a record deal at the time and balled out for the Bears. Aaron Donald did it 2 years in a row prior to last season. He gets a record deal eclipsing Khalil Mack's, which had just been set a few days earlier. And what did he do last year? Yeah, made a strong case to be the MVP. You have a couple other guys holding out right now. Trent Williams, Melvin Gordon. Different situations, different positions. But nonetheless, the only leverage they have is to hold out. So don't criticize NFL players for holding out when you know they are underpaid at their respective position, when you know they deserve more money than their teams are currently paying them. This is the only leverage they have. So for you to sit there and criticize these guys for not being in training camp, not putting the team first, all that nonsense, stop. Don't do it, because this is the only leverage they have. It's their number one means of making something happen. And typically, for the best players, it plays out. Because that's just what happened for Zeke. He held out. He's going to be practicing today. He's going to be on the field for week 1 when they take on the Giants on Sunday. So for you to go on social media and criticize these players and call them out, saying that they don't put the team first, all this other nonsense, stop. You're wasting your time. You're spitting in the wind because what you're saying doesn't make sense. This is what these guys have to do. This is what these guys have to do. And the teams know it. That's why Jerry Jones was never pressed about Zeke not showing up. He knew Zeke's value. He knew it from the very beginning. Now, what Jerry Jones maybe didn't want to do is to roll over for any player because he is the owner of that team. I understand that. Not just from an emotional standpoint, but from a position in terms of where he stands with that organization. He's not going to just succumb to anyone's demands necessarily. It's going to play out. There's going to be some back and forth. You're going to hear from me. I'm going to hear from you. But don't think you're going to run up here and hand me a blank check and expect me to sign it. That's not what Jerry Jones was going to do. But Jerry Jones knew from the very beginning what he was going to have to put out for Ezekiel Elliott. He knew it from the very beginning. Stephen Jones knew it from the very beginning, regardless of what they said publicly. They knew how it was going to play out. So Jerry Jones also today on CNBC was talking about this particular contract, not just what it means for Ezekiel Elliott, but what it also means for the entire Dallas Cowboys team, because A, you got 53 players you're trying to get paid, right? You just signed Jalen Smith. You just signed La'el Collins. You got to sign Dak. You got to sign Amari Cooper. So it is some far-reaching ramifications of this salary. And this was Jerry Jones earlier today on CNBC talking about what this contract means for Dallas.
I just turned my pockets out upstairs. It means I'm $100 million lighter as of this morning. But seriously, Zeke has been arguably our best player. I'm not trying to be unfair to anybody else, but he's an incremental part to our success. We're glad to get him booked in. We're glad to have him on the team. He plays a position that has some pretty interesting dynamics to it, because running backs are short-lived, although we had what I consider to be one of the top 5 greatest ones in Emmitt Smith. And Emmitt ran the ball for 13 years. So you don't have to have a 4 or 5 year career to be a running back. On the other hand, Zeke allows us to create such problems for the defense that then we can open it up to our passing, open it up for Dak Prescott.
That's the impact, okay? So all that money spent, $100 million, Jared making fun, should say making light of that, because he's got so much more than that, literally probably in his golf bag. But he understands the value of Zeke Elliott to the franchise collectively in terms of just overall value and where it stands right now, but also to the on-field success. And he made the comparison to Emmitt Smith, because Emmitt Smith did run the ball in Dallas for 13 years, and he led them to, 3 Super Bowls, right? Jerry Jones sees the potential with Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, and Ezekiel Elliott that he has another Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith trio. And he wants to take advantage of that. So he knows what it costs. He knows what it means. It was going to be there the whole time. And this is how this thing was going to play out from the very beginning. Everyone's been saying, I knew it was going to happen, I knew it was going to happen. Everyone knew it was going to happen. So because of that, that's why I say, A, stop criticizing players like Zeke for holding out to get what they deserve. That's the only way they're going to get it. It's the only way they feel as if they're going to get it, that guaranteed money that they deserve at their respective position. Don't criticize those guys for doing it. Because when you say they don't put the team first by holding out, what you're really saying is they don't deserve what they're being paid. Now, maybe that comes from a position of envy for you, or jealousy that these athletes get paid this much money to play a game and you weren't good enough as an athlete to be a professional. So you had to go on and do whatever the chosen profession you have now. And maybe that's where it comes from, jealousy and envy. But you don't do what they do. Your job is not their job. The market for your position is not the market for their respective positions. So stop saying that they are not putting the team first when they hold out. If you go to your boss and ask for a raise, are you putting yourself first or the team first or the company first? What are you doing? You're trying to get what you deserve. Yeah, but I can't just show up for work and get a raise. Right, because you're not a professional athlete. You don't have contracts that are collectively bargained. It's not the same argument. So when people try to carry water for these owners and management as it relates to professional athletes and what they do to try to get what they deserve from a salary standpoint, I just don't understand it. It makes no sense whatsoever, because your situation is not comparable to theirs in any capacity. Any capacity. The only thing slightly similar is a contract employee and a company. Most of us aren't contract employees. I happen to be one, but most of us aren't. Most of us are salaried employees who work for a company. If you are a freelancer or a contracted employee, you have to do certain things to get what you think you deserve, and you have to negotiate those things. And sometimes you withhold work to get them. That's how that game is played. It's a different game. So don't criticize these athletes for holding out. They're trying to get what they deserve. They're trying to get what the market demands for them. And if the owners aren't going to give it to them on their own volition, they have to do whatever they have to do to get it. So stop criticizing these players, especially NFL players, for holding out. And I also go back to the very first thing I said. The Cowboys wasted everybody's time. Everybody. It was a waste of time from the beginning. If they didn't want Ezekiel Elliott to show up for training camp and just do whatever, they could have given this contract a month ago. Now, yo, here's your money. Don't say nothing. Enjoy your time in Cabo and come back before week 1. They could have done that. Because what did wasting all this time do for anybody? And don't say it added more exposure to the Cowboys, because they didn't need it to begin with. They were going to get it regardless. But we are where we were going to be the whole time. Zeke got his money. The Cowboys knew they were going to give it to him. It just took a month for all this to play out. Needlessly. The Cowboys, Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, wasted everyone's time when they were going to do this from the very beginning. The very beginning. So if you're a Cowboys fan, clearly you are thankful that Ezekiel Elliott is now ready to play. Because you can put all this drama behind you. Whatever doubt you had deep down in your soul, you may have believed it was going to happen, but if you had any doubt whatsoever, that is gone. Now the question is, are you good enough? Are you good enough to win your division? Are you good enough to win a playoff game? Are you good enough to possibly go to the NFC Championship game? Are you good enough to go to the Super Bowl this year with a good offensive line, with a solid quarterback, the best running back maybe in the NFL, a top-tier deep threat wide receiver, and a really, really good defense? Are you good enough now? Are you good enough? Because if you're not, how are you going to feel after all this stuff that played out, after all the time that was wasted? For you to be here right now and you still not be good enough, then who are you going to be mad at? You going to be mad at Jerry, Stephen Jones? They spent all this money, they didn't spend on the right people? You going to be mad? Are you good enough, Dallas Cowboy fan? Are you good enough? Is Zeke enough with Amari Cooper and Dak Prescott? Is that enough? Did your team do right by you and how this whole thing played out? That's what you're going to be asking yourself going into week 1. Now, you might think you know. You might believe deep down that, oh, yeah, we're good enough. We're totally good enough. There's doubt because you're a Cowboys fan, right? That's natural. That's what you have. But it took a while. You're finally here. You are right here, right now, with the highest paid running back in the NFL. Your quarterback is about to get maybe a record-setting deal as well. Your wide receiver may get one down the road. But here you are. The Cowboys wasted your time with this Ezekiel Elliott negotiation, but for you, was it all worth it? That's the question you have right now. 888